Number 7.
Stage 3 drought update.
All right, Mr. Hagmark, hello.
Madam Mayor, council members, Joshua Hagmark, Water Resources Manager, here again for a monthly update on our water supply situation. Today's discussion will be covering quite a few things. We're going over the weather forecasts and rain totals so far, community conservation efforts, water supply strategy for this new water year we're in, lake and reservoir operations, capital project status update, our water budget impacts, and of course our water conservation program highlights. So probably the most promising information we've had in a while, probably 4 or 5 years now from NOAA, now indicating the chances of above average rainfall for our part of California. But this is coupled with also the prediction of above average temperatures, which kind of counteracts that above average rainfall. One of the other challenges we're seeing with NOAA's prediction is they still have equal chances of rainfall in Northern California. About 75% of our storage capacity for the state, speaking to this, the statewide drought, is in Northern California. So if they don't see significant rainfall, it could continue to cause problems even if we do see an average year here. Rainfall so far, we're off to a very slow start. Don't anticipate any uptick in rainfall until probably late December and into January, February. So far, Gibraltar at 32% of normal, and Santa Barbara, downtown Santa Barbara at 27% of normal. On the more positive side, the community is doing a fantastic job and continues to excel at our goal of 25% conservation. We saw 28% conservation for the community in October. We're getting into the cooler months. It's a little more difficult to hit those high numbers that we were seeing in the summer because there's not as much outdoor water usage or discretionary water usage. That brings our cumulative total since declaring as stage 3 to 36%. It's doing fantastic, and it continues to help out with our long-term water supply planning. So here's what our current supply strategy looks like with the 25% conservation goal. We are here in year 5. We just started year 5, October 1st. And we have adequate supplies to meet demands for this year, assuming our conservation goals. We now have our recycled water facility online, and we're showing the production of that. We do have excess capacity still in the treatment facility and delivery system. We just don't have the demand in the system. And that was part of the design, is to allow for possible build-out and additional customers. You'll see that we're using Kachuma carryover water. This is water that we've been able to save through conservation efforts in the lake, and that is basically all that is remaining in the lake. We will be heavily relying on groundwater this year, and of course the water purchases that we made last year are going to be instrumental in helping us to meet demands through this year should drought conditions continue. We still notice we're now, instead of calling it a shortage, these are supplies yet undetermined. Trying to leave it open. We're hoping that's rainfall. That would be the easy answer to some of these. But we do have additional conservation measures that could be implemented, along with the possibility of expansion of the desal plant, should it come to that. We also took a look at possibility of moving to a 35% conservation target in May, following this winter's rainfall, and what that might look like on our water supply situation. This, again, I think this really kind of indicates that we do have a solid plan going forward, and even for next year, the shortages we'd be looking at, if we had to move the target to 35%, we'd be able to meet demands. The way the desal decision, the expansion would work out, if we were to make that decision this next spring, based on the timeline we've put together, realistically, that additional water supply would not be available until year 7 or 2018. So that's the information that we have now. So looking ahead at the milestones, we have been talking the last couple years about regulations. We feel like we have a pretty good handle on it, and so we're not planning to have a big discussion until February, March, on regulations, just trying to see how this winter is going to play out. As far as the supply management side of it, we are still looking to secure supplemental water, purchase it, and the timing typically for that is we need to make those decisions by April, so hopefully by that time we will also have a good idea of where we stand locally with our water supply. And then as I mentioned, the desal expansion decision, we have a couple things that are pushing that along. We do need to get notices out, and so we will be developing rate notices for both an expanded desal and no expansion of desal, so that we can be prepared to send out the appropriate one. And then we'll have the state revolving fund loan increase. That's going to take some time to get in place. And right now, we currently have a proposal from IDE to expand the facility that expires on May 31st. Staff is going to sit down with them and see if we can't negotiate a July timeframe possibly for that decision so that we have adequate time to get the financing, everything together, should we have to go down that road. Status of our reservoirs, capacity of Kachuma as of Monday was just over 30,000 acre feet, or 15.6% of capacity. Of that remaining water, about 2,600 acre feet is available to the city. Fish water releases continue. Those have not been reduced. They're about 8 acre feet per day. And we right now are relying heavily on the emergency pump project, which is making it possible to move state water and Lake Kachuma water to the south coast. It's currently pumping about 45 acre feet a day to the communities of Montecito, Carpinteria, Goleta, Santa Barbara. Gibraltar sits with about 400 acre feet of water in it. The water quality is very poor, and so we haven't been pulling any more water down from there. We do have the staff up there that are prepped for El Nino and continued drought. We basically have them up there. They've got their supplies should they get cut off from the city during significant downpours. I mean, there could be, you could go at least a week without having access down to the reservoir. It's very remote. As I mentioned, the recycled water system as of November 2nd is online. And staff is now, as we kind of wrap up the paperwork from that, we'll start to focus on cost recovery from the filter design error. And so there'll be work that I'm sure will go late into 2016 on that. We have been communicating with our customers to let them know their recycled water facility is up and running, letting them know they can now resume their usage, because we have been asking them to make the same reductions in water because it was a blend. So we've contacted them by mail, but we've also sent out a newsletter, and we're also making available this sign you see here for them to post on their lawns or landscaped areas so that we can help cut down on that confusion when you see these green lawns popping up, particularly in our schools and parks that do receive recycled water. And if anybody wants to get one of these signs, we encourage you to visit our website or give our hotline a call, and we'd be happy to get you some. Our groundwater wells, the high school well project is out to bid right now. And again, this is just the wellhead. The actual piping that goes down into the ground was put in 2005. We're anticipating award sometime in December, and then we'll be in production by the summer. Along with that, we're doing some maintenance on the Hope well. It's in need of some cleaning of the gravel pack to help boost production there. And again, hoping to get that online by this spring. Desal project, we did finish demo on site, and contractor had started subsurface underground utility work, and unfortunately came across some suspicious soil. It had a bunch of rubble and trash in it. We sent it off to be tested, and it came back showing hydrocarbon and lead contamination. So for the time being, we've had to stop all underground utility work on site. There are other activities that continue on, and we are working on a work plan for remediation and cleanup. We do not have a cost or schedule impact at this time. Going into this, the underground utility work was not on the critical path. The critical path ran through the delivery of the treatment facility. The treatment, if you remember, is kind of a modular facility. It's being constructed off-site. As long as the on-site underground utilities can be finished by May, it shouldn't have any impact on the delivery by September. I can't get into a lot of details, but just wanted to update the council that we did present a draft term sheet to the Montecito Water District on November 3rd, and we have yet to hear a response, but our goal is to obviously finish up negotiations by December 31st and have something to bring back to council in January, February for a public discussion. So water budget impacts. So it has been improving. I think the first time I reported to you, we were seeing revenues down 17%. We're down to about 10.5%, having a few more months of data. It's about 1.3 million. If things continue, I think we'll be okay this year. We've been doing well on controlling our expenditures as well. So we're hopeful we'll be able to finish this year without too significant of a problem. However, we are working on FY17 water rates. They will be coming to you next week, just to give you a heads up. We are planning for a range of scenarios, which has made this study a little more expensive than we would have liked, but I think we need to be preparing for kind of both extremes, and we need to be ready to act. So as I mentioned, no expansion of desal is one of the options we'll be looking at, and that's basically drought conditions improve. Expansion of desal would be some type of persisting drought or worsening. The other element is water demand variability, as we've been kind of fighting this year. Is, we have a conservation goal, the community is exceeding that, which is fantastic. But how do we keep our revenues balanced and don't end up in a significant hole when this drought is over? And then the impacts of a potential water sales agreement with Montecito, with that trying to leave a gap in there for that potentially to feed into those rates. And we anticipate coming back and having that information available for a council discussion sometime in the February March timeframe. Unless there isn't any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Madeline Ward.
We do have some questions. Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Hagmar, going back to the soil contamination, was there any type of anticipation whatsoever for that happening? And if so, is that taken care of in a contingency budget, or is that still to be determined?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, unfortunately, we made the assumption as we were moving quickly that the site had just been recently touched in the 90s and assumed that there had been some relative soil sampling, because we are aware of contamination down in this area. And unfortunately, it doesn't appear that information was picked up, which was somewhat odd. But no, there isn't any contingency built in for this. And so we'll have to be digging into the change order. The project did have some change order, but I don't know that how much it will be sufficient to cover this.
Mr. Francisco?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Hagmark, were you at the negotiations or the discussion with Montecito over desal?
Yes, it was.
Did they name a number that they're interested in terms of acre feet, or a range of acre feet?
They have not. They've been. We have offered up to 2,500 acre feet of capacity, but they have not indicated what their interest is in that amount.
But they did indicate an interest, I assume.
Yes.
Okay.
Very interested, and they felt they appreciated the generosity of the amount that was offered.
Great. Thanks.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is it possible to say now how much of a shock that March bill is going to be to ratepayers?
Councilmember Hotchkiss?
I know it's going to be an increase. You talked about the March rates.
Oh, the
water rates.
The discussion in March. There's just so many variabilities. Certainly, Montecito's participation could mean a lowering of water rates, potentially. I mean, I don't want to put the carrot out there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an increase. There's so many things that are dependent in play right now. Mm-hmm.
Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we now have the reclaim system up and running, and of course that's a purple pipe network throughout our city. Are the folks that, and I'm assuming that there are dozens or 100 or 2 land owners next to it who are not hooked up to the purple pipes. Is there any way, and I know it's a significant cost, and hopefully we're just going to get rain, and there would be no big deal, but do those folks next to the purple pipes, are they aware that they are next to it and might have the opportunity, I'm presuming, that they could hook up should they wish to? Is that true? And then are they aware of it?
Yes, Councilmember White, I'll let Madam Board chime in on this too. We do have a list of people who have contacted us and who are interested. Those that are right next to the pipeline, it's fairly simple. It's more challenging. The ones that are located a block or 2 blocks away, and at this point we're telling them that they'd have to pick up the cost of that extension of the system if they were interested in that. And most of them, unfortunately, have kind of gone away, but I can have Ms. Ward speak to any current discussions.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember White, we do have a new development that's on the system that is required, if they're right on the main, they are required to use the recycled water for irrigation. So we do have one project that's in development right now that will be connecting to that. We do have ongoing discussions with others that are directly on the main, but it is a significant cost for them to upgrade their irrigation system, depending on how old it is. So we do have ongoing discussions with some of these customers, but as Mr. Hagmark said, most of the people we have been hearing from are not very close to the main. They are quite a few blocks away, and the cost is quite extensive to rip up the streets and lay new water mains to go to their site.
And I suppose really that this conversation would be one which we hopefully won't have to have, where if we have another bad rain year, then perhaps we might consider notifying neighbors to the purple pipes that opportunity is available. Because as you say, it is a significant expense to hook up, but next spring, if it's really droughty, then it might be worth it to some of those folks. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Hart?
Well, following up on Councilmember White's questions, has there been consideration at the staff level of changing the financing and cost equation for those residents, and strategically deciding that it may make more financial sense to subsidize the cost of hooking up to the recycled water system as opposed to paying for new water supplies on the potable side? Have you done that kind of analysis of what that would mean and how those trade-offs work?
Councilmember Hart, we've been trying to put together, again, we've got a lot of stuff on our plate, but trying to put together a discussion to have with the City Council on the policies that we currently have in place and whether we want to do something different with those policies. And I think that is something that we certainly can revisit again, but it hasn't in the past been, without grant funding, something that has been cost effective.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hart, Rebecca Bjork, Public Works Director. During the last water supply update, we did look at all of the opportunities for expansion of recycled water and identified the cost per unit that it would take to develop the infrastructure needed to extend the recycled water plant infrastructure, and the cost of the pipeline is significantly high enough that unless there's a fairly significant demand, it's up in the thousands of dollars per acre foot range to extend the pipeline. Our first opportunity is to look along the pipeline, as Councilmember White suggested, for people who are nearby who either are not fully using recycled water and can offset more of the potable water use on their site, or add people who are adjacent to the existing infrastructure. So we would be looking there first before we would be looking to expand the recycled water system. So we have done fairly extensive analysis of that and think we understand where those opportunities are, but they're very expensive, and they're certainly the cost of that is probably more than the cost of other new water supplies at this time.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. In terms of the extension of the pipe, that makes a lot of sense. But I think Councilmember White's point was people literally on the pipeline itself. Mm-hmm. And, we do provide the rebates for customers to retrofit their landscaping, external landscaping. I'm thinking in those kind of terms. Has there been, and I welcome the discussion when you come back with additional information. We don't need to run this to ground now. But I think there must be a calculation where hooking up to the existing pipe right next to your property, if there was some sort of financial incentive to the extent that we do with the external landscaping rebate, that might tip that scale.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hart, we have offered the landscaping rebates in the past, and that would be an equivalent thing at this point in time.
So you mean somebody theoretically could apply that $1,000 credit
Correct.
to the cost of making this connection? Okay, well that is the point I was trying to make. Then. Thank you.
Okay, please continue.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Madeline Ward. I'm the Water Conservation Coordinator, and I will share a few slides with you just to give you a quick update about the conservation program. So I wanted to alert everyone to the fact that it is fall planting season. If anyone is removing their lawn, this is the ideal time to plant those plants because they're currently putting down roots and they're not putting up shoots. So their water demands are much lower. And in the fall and winter, many of the plants go dormant, and we hopefully will get some rain, which will also make it easier to establish the plants without the use of potable water. It's perfect for natives and Mediterranean plants, and we are giving a fall planting extension for those that received a landscape rebate pre-inspection over this summer. Their 120-day window started on October 1st, so they have the winter period to establish those plants rather than the heat of the summer. We have a new GardenWise TV episode that was just released, and I'm going to highlight some of the segments of that show because it's a really great one. It's titled Lawn Be Gone, What to Do Next, and we highlight 2 case studies of landscape rebate participants throughout the county. There's great before and after pictures. They talk about the design process. The woman up top hired a designer, and the woman in the bottom designed the landscape herself. They talk about the ease of the process as well as the feedback that they've received from friends and neighbors. And that's something that we do consistently here is as they're in their garden, working on it, maintaining it, they consistently have people in the neighborhood coming up to them or even knocking on their door and asking them what plants these are and how they selected their plants. It's something that we like to hear all the time. We also delve into the garden design process with Joan Bolton, one of the local landscape designers. She talks about plant selection, plant groupings, dry creek beds and pathways. And we also tag along with the Sweetwater Collaborative Waterwise Home Walking Tour. They conducted 2 Waterwise Home Walking Tours over the summer, one in the Westside neighborhood and one in the Samarkand neighborhood, to highlight rainwater catchment systems, waterwise lawn alternatives, bioswales, and gray water systems. We also get a lot of questions about how to select plants, and then also when you're in the nursery, what to look for to make sure it's a good, healthy, robust plant that will survive your garden. So we asked 2 different experts from Windmill Nursery and Seaside Gardens to talk about some of their favorite plants, some of their bomb-proof natives that they recommend for home gardens. And all of these wonderful episodes can be viewed on our YouTube channel, as well as City TV Channel 18, the County Channel 20, or Comcast Channel 23. And here's our website for more information, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker slips for this? No? Okay. So any other comments or questions from the council? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Hopefully by the next time we see you, there'll be more rain totals. That would be nice.